What does it take to be the best in the world at what you do? So good, in fact, that you become the most famous Olympic gold medalist in history in your sport. Buckle on up as you are about to hear from this legendary Olympic champion.
Welcome to the Motivation Show podcast, where we interview remarkable world-class experts that help bring out the greatness within you. Top book authors, super successful business people, and outstanding special guests that will motivate and inspire you with their incredible, uplifting stories and life-changing tips and strategies. Our goal is your success. If you desire more out of life, you've dialed into the right show. So fasten your seatbelts, friends, and let's get ready for some high-octane motivation. Now, your host, the mayor of motivation, Eli Marcus.
Our guest on the Motivation Show is the most recognized male figure skating star in the world. He has been inducted into the United States Olympic Hall of Fame and is a privileged member of the World Figure Skating Hall of Fame. In the 1984 Sarajevo Olympics, he mesmerized the world with his gold medal winning performance. He continues to share his love and enthusiasm for the sport as a TV analyst and commentator, performer, producer, and now New York Times best-selling author of Finish First, Winning Changes Everything. He is a cancer and pituitary brain tumor survivor. So life has not always been a bed of roses, and we are going to learn how he has overcome these mind-boggling challenges. Welcome to the Motivation Show, Scott Hamilton.
Well, thanks for having me. Let's motivate people.
Well, Scott, if anybody can motivate anybody, I have a feeling that you can, because you don't fit the prototypical sort of thought of what maybe an Olympian champion really is, right?
Definitely not. No, definitely not. Yeah, I can agree with you there.
I want to first thank you for being that shining example that actually nice guys can indeed finish first.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. What was life like for Scott Hamilton growing up in your earlier years?
Well, I mean, it was unique. I was adopted at 6 weeks of age. I was kind of an oops by a single mother that I'm sure had other options. So I'm just really grateful to breathe in, breathe out. And the parents that adopted me were spectacular and incredible. And so, growing up the first adopted child in a household, it's and my older sister, who was born of my parents, was like, how long is he going to be here? That type of thing. But, when you have a birth child, they usually come with expectations. Like if you're in athletics, you expect them to be, have athleticism. If you're in academia, you expect them to get into, school and, the pursuit of wisdom. But when you're an adopted child, you're sort of like, let's just see what happens. And so there was kind of this clean slate and this white canvas that my parents just sort of allowed me to live in. And I was very sick for years. And then I was in and out of hospitals for like 4 years. And then, our family physician just told my parents they needed a morning off. And so I went to the skating rink, the brand new skating rink at Bowling Green State University. And it was there that I just fell in love with skating, because I realized that I was really literally and figuratively on equal footing with all the well kids and the best athletes in my grade. But, it was just one of those things that I just fell in love with the idea that I had, like, for the first time in my life, self-esteem. Like I could do something as well kids, and I could do something as well as the best athletes in my grade. And so as I improved in skating, my health improved. And so my parents were basically, okay, this works. 4 years of sleeping in the corner of the room in a hospital, right? This works. So we're going to continue to skate. So I became a skater, and I spent a lot of time trying to figure it out, how to rise above my condition of being in a small town with limited coaching and no real, I guess, pedigree, I should say. a lot of Bowling Green was brand new, and the skaters that skated there took their first steps and as they opened their doors, and there was no culture for championship skating. So I spent the first bunch of years just skating in Bowling Green, and then a judge from Cincinnati, came to my mom and just said, if you're going to do this, you should probably do it all in. And so she recommended I go to Illinois and take from a coach there. And I had the privilege and the honor of skating with Janet Lynn, who was at that time the most popular woman athlete in the world. And I just kind of had to figure out how to train, how to take in coaching, how to apply it to my day to day. And then when my name was announced, how to actually compete. And I failed a lot, like consistently.
And what did you learn from that
um,
failure?
just that I am not afraid of it. And I got to a point where I wasn't afraid to fail, but I also got to a point where I knew there was something to mine. Like I had something in there that needed to come out. And so I just had to, keep working it until I figured out a way to on the night show up and put down a performance that was worthy of a podium. And from there, it's still kind of a little bit of up and down, and still a little bit of R&D that needed to be done on my skating. But once I figured it out, there was really no turning back. I went all in, and I was able to compete at a really high level for a long period of time.
Was there a tipping point, Scott, where you got to where you
Yes.
said to yourself, gee, you know something? I have something here. I might actually be an Olympian.
No, it wasn't so much that. All of that was a byproduct of basically. I bounced around on the lower levels. Novice, I came in ninth out of nine the first year at nationals, and then ninth out of 10 my second year at nationals, and then figured, what's the worst thing that can happen? I go up to junior level. Why not? It's like I own the cellar, of men's skating at that time at Met. And I was seventh the first year, and then a new coach came in and kind of cracked the whip, and so I ended up winning junior nationals kind of out of nowhere, and that got me a sponsor, and a coach showed some interest in me, so I moved to Denver. And after my first year on the senior level, where I came in, ta-da, ninth again, it was there that I realized that my mom had sacrificed everything, all of her own personal comfort, anything that she could have, had that she worked hard for, that she sacrificed for her children. And I was squandering it. And, I was in her hospital room. She was suffering from cancer until about 3:30 in the morning, and then went home and went to sleep on the couch because we had a lot of people visiting us to support us. And my brother-in-law at the time woke me up and just said, "Your mother is gone." And that was the moment that everything, everything changed. I went for a walk in our backyard, and I just walked for, I don't know how many hours. I just walked because what do I do with that grief? How do I deal with the loss of, kind of the woman, the person, the human, the parent I love most on the planet,
Of
and it's
course.
like, how do I do this? And then it just came to me, thank you, Lord, that I could honor her in everything I did. And so I took her to the ice with me every day. And then
Oh,
anytime
wow.
I felt like, I was going to, I'll just be a little late today. No, honor her, be on time. I'm just going to get off a little early because I'm kind of sick of doing figures. No, honor her, stay on to the last possible second, get as much as you can. I don't really feel like doing a long program run through today because they're kind of hard. And it's like, no, honor her, do your long program run through. So I went from being sort of a guy that would do kind of the minimum to being that guy that would do the maximum. And it was all just to show gratitude, appreciation, honor my mom for everything that she sacrificed for me, and to show her just daily how much I loved her and I wanted to become the person that she always dreamed I could be. And that kept me really super accountable. So I would show up at the ice every day and I wanted more, I wanted more, I wanted more. And the results followed, from that ninth place finish the last time she saw me skate in competition to the next season, I was third in the United States and 11th in the world, to 2 years later being on the 1980 Olympic team where I came in fifth and then fifth at Worlds. And then for the next 4 years, I never lost the competition. And that was like, 4 US champions, 4 world championships, international competitions, and then Olympic, what in the world, Olympic gold. So, it was just one of those things that, I was skating for something greater than myself. And it was just the idea that I could aspire to be the skater person that my mom dreamed I could be, and that everything that she sacrificed to allow that to happen. So yeah, it was a real motivating factor and a real, humbling thing where, I never really felt worthy of any of it. It just sort of happened. And the more I invested in my success, the more success followed. And so, yeah, so I
Great
had
lesson
that
right
kind
there,
of,
investing in your
yeah,
success. Yeah.
yeah, rags to riches thing, and so it became like this guy that was perennial living in the basement to now, being able to compete with anyone in the world. And it just started with that decision that, yeah, I'm going to make this happen. I'm just going to do it. And with no promise of anything on the other end. I was the ninth place guy in the country, which is, no expectation, right? So once I realized that I could sacrifice just general kind of lazy comfort for just something more. And then that was just honestly just to be the best that I could be and committing to the long haul. It was remarkable how the results just came from just that one decision of honoring my mom.
You write in your book, Finish First, that the odds of you becoming an Olympic athlete were basically slim to none.
Yeah, none. Yeah.
Why were the odds so slim? And did you realize it at the time that they were that
Well,
slim?
I didn't come from any kind of pedigree. I didn't. My parents weren't. They were in academia. My dad was a PhD professor of biology. My mom was the second grade school teacher who went back, got her master's to be an associate professor at Bowling Green in the home economics department, where she majored in marriage and family relations. And she, just worked. She taught school, went to school, raised a family. She had like 3 sets of clothes, because everything went to her kids. And so, it was like there was any of that that said, oh, by the way, your son's going to go to the Olympics and win a gold medal. No, no. I mean, it was Bowling Green built a skating rink so they could have a hockey team and classes for their students. So it was the one facility at the university that was used as much by the city as it was by the students. And I was, a true beneficiary of just sort of build it and they will come, right? That
Yep.
old field of dreams thing. And also, just the idea that there was no set expectation, which is kind of a two-edged sword. It can really hurt you or it can really help you. And then, the fact that I was given the opportunity to train with some of the best skaters in the world, and they set an example for me. But honestly, with my childhood illness, my size, my health, none of that really is a recipe for Olympic success. It just isn't.
Not usually.
It
Yep.
just came out of that, I guess, sheer will of really just trying to be the best that I could be, and to see, what came of that.
How many hours a day did you actually train for the Olympics? And when you had those moments where you wanted to quit, was there anything else besides your mom that kind of kept you moving forward?
In the beginning, it was all mom, and I would go about 4 hours a day of that's just the compulsory figures, just tracing circles and trying to master the turns and the cleanliness of the edge and all that. And that was kind of tedious and boring, and I didn't really like them very much. And honestly, they didn't like me either. It was kind of one of those things where if you dread doing something, the results follow. I like to free skate, and I love the excitement of jumping and spinning and performing, and just the athleticism of all that was really satisfying to me. But I didn't like the tedious nature of just doing the compulsory figures. And then it got to a point where something, it just sort of, I realized after the 80 Olympics that, because I was eighth in the figures and in Lake Placid and at the World Championships, and I was able to pull up to fifth, that if I wanted to win, I had to get, it's kind of what my kids all the time, I do this and they always roll their eyes. It's like, what's the greatest strength? And they go, "Ugh, lack of weakness." And I go, right, figure out where you're weak and get strong.
Mm.
And I realized that I wasn't very competent at compulsory figures because I did them half-hearted. And so I decided that if I wanted to win, and I was fifth in the world, and then the gold medalist Robin Cousins turned pro, the silver medalist Jan Hoffman went to medical school, and the bronze medalist Charlie Tickner turned pro. Basically, all I had to do was wake up one morning and I'm ranked second in the world.
Yeah.
Kind of a great cup of coffee, right? So how do I win? Well, the guy that I had to beat was a wizard at compulsory figures. And so it was like, okay, there's the carrot. And so I started investing in that thing that I hated to do the most. And all of a sudden I realized that it was a really healthy, fun, honest challenge. And I fell in love with compulsory figures to the point that if you go back to Sarajevo, it was the main reason I won the gold medal was because I won the compulsory figures and I beat some amazingly talented guys at compulsory figures, especially Jean-Christophe Simon from France, who was the best probably ever. And I beat him 5 judges to 4 on the first figure, 7 judges to 2 on the second figure. And then on the third figure, I beat him 9 judges to 0. And
Wow.
so it was like, I had to prove it to the judges that I was worthy of that, and I did. And then I had a huge lead going into the free skating portions. And there's a Canadian skater named Brian Orser, who was half of the Battle of the Bryans in 1988, who absolutely ran a clinic in the long program and destroyed me in the long program. But I was still able to come in second and in the long, and I had to be fifth in the long in order to lose. And the odds of that happening were slim, and so I put myself in a position to win, and I was able to do that. And then a month later, I was able to go to Canada, Brian Orser's home country, and I was able to beat him there at the World Championships to kind of like stamp, all right, I'm the right guy. I did my 4-year period between Olympics and I did it as well as I possibly could. And now I am flat broke living in my best friend's parents' basement. Now it's time for me to get a job and build a life and career. So I knew that was next.
So, did you enjoy, Scott, the competition and winning the gold medal at the very time you were doing it, or did you appreciate competing and winning more in retrospect?
To me, a lot of it was I didn't like competing. It was extremely stressful, and it was always there was always that anticipation of failure because I'd done it so many times, right? So I would always tell people that the process of competing wasn't the enjoyment of, kind of that whole lead up to the night. It was the performance itself was something I really loved. It was a blast to be in front of an audience and just skate. But I love winning. I got to the point where that 10 minutes after you win is the most euphoric and the most satisfying thing you can possibly imagine. And then that dissipates, and that's like, okay, back to work. Time to get ready for the next one. And I love that 10 minutes after I won. And it was sort of what kind of allowed me to, kind of keep going. The first time I won the world championships, I'm standing on the podium and I'm saying, man, either the sport's at its lowest place in history if I'm its champion, or I've really got to up my game. And so I drove myself crazy. I just really struggled that year, and my coach managed it perfectly. So the next year, when I got through the season and I remained undefeated that year, I'm standing on the podium winning my second world championship, and I'm looking around going, I'm not competing against every sentient being on the planet Earth, nor am I competing against the history of the sport. I'm competing with guys just like me, guys. They're just guys. And they put their skates on one skate at a time, and they're trying to do their best here. And if I can stay ahead of these guys for 2 more years, there's a pretty good chance I could win an Olympic gold medal. And, I was like, wow, wow, wow. And so then it becomes this kind of laser focus of keep your eye a little bit. Don't look over your shoulder, but keep your eye on the field and make sure that you're able to strategically stay ahead of the guys that you want to beat.
What happens when doubts crept in and did say to yourself, well, maybe I am not worthy. Maybe these guys are better than me. Why, am I even trying? When
That's a
you
good
did you
question.
have those moments? How did you kind of bust through
You
that?
know, yeah, I think you always have moments, right, where you wonder if you're worthy of it or what it's going to take and who's going to rise up. And then, just sort of that, it's like, okay, what do I need to do? Get strong where I'm weak
Get back to work.
and get back to work. And nothing replaces work. You can have all the natural talent in the world. When I would go out to LA to get the choreography when I was a professional skater, and my choreographer was an amazing, talented woman named 𝐒𝐜𝐴ℎ, and she was just genius and brilliant. And the things that we were able to create were really fun and really enjoyable for the audience. And the rink where we would skate sometimes, I would go and Wayne Gretzky would be there, the greatest hockey
The
player
great
ever,
Gretzky.
the great one, right? And he'd be on the ice, and he'd have the ice to himself, and he'd be working with, endurance and agility and speed, kind of the coach, and then he'd be working on his stick handling, and I saw that, and I was like, this guy is the greatest skater, greatest hockey player in the history of the sport, and he's working harder than everyone.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, and he also said,
It's like he didn't.
yeah, he said you miss 100% of the shots you never take, right?
Right. And so he was that guy that, yeah, maybe he had all the natural ability in the world, but that wasn't going to see him to the finish line. That
Yep.
wasn't going to get him a cup. He had to work
Mhm.
hard at using whatever gifts he was given and leveraging those gifts into something even beyond spectacular. And so, you learn from people around you. It's like, Michael Jordan was kind of crushing it, and I would look and I would watch him and I'd say, wow, it's like he's working really hard. And all the people that I saw that were super successful were working really hard. And post Olympics, there was no real place for a male figure skater. 𝐒𝐜𝐴ₐ signed me because that 4-year run I had hadn't been done since 1960. And well, the 4-year run hadn't been done since 1956, right? Because I won 4 world titles, and a guy who won gold in '60 won 3 world titles, and he didn't compete at the Worlds in '60, but he would have won because he was that great. But so they signed me, and I told them I was going to be your model employee, best they've ever had. I was going to show up every day. I was going to skate hard. I was going to, just promote, promote, promote. And they're like, yeah, well, sure, whatever. And, I realized at that time that if I needed a role model, there really wasn't one in skating. There was Gordy McKellen, who was the national champion in '73, '74, and '75. And I skated with him in Illinois at the training ground with Janet Lynn. And I watched him and just how he was as a skater and as an athlete. And he was a great role model. But I knew if I wanted to build a professional career, there was really nobody there that I could, kind of say, well, I'm going to step into those shoes, because the shoes didn't really exist the way I wanted them to. And so Sarah and I would just create these outrageous programs. But my role models at the time were Neil Diamond, because he showed joy every single time he was on stage in front of an audience. And that's why he was able to tour for 50 years.
Sweet Caroline.
Bum, bum, bum. And then the other role model was Bruce Springsteen, who just worked harder than anyone else. I mean, those 4-hour shows are legendary. And he just, built an audience. He just said, I don't have an audience now, but I'm going to build one. And to this day, he can tour the world and sell out stadiums, And then my third role model was a guy named Robert Plant, who was the lead singer of Led Zeppelin,
Of
who
course.
went solo. And in his solo career, he was adventurous and took chances and would take on different identities and rhythms and styles. And it was like, I need to do that, because, you can show joy and you can work really hard, but how do you create longevity? And that's by being bold and adventurous and introducing things fresh every year that allow you to kind of stay evergreen to an audience, where you're not just resting on your past success as your pushing the envelope every year to skate a little bit faster, a little bit more intricate, a little bit more entertaining, and you leverage what you did the year before in order to really take you to the next place the year after.
Mm.
And I was able to do that for 20 years.
Wow. Yeah. Busting that status quo. I love that story.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
one of the great quotes that you have in your book is that making the choice to finish first will change the trajectory and quality of your life and will change everything. Can you tell us
Mhm.
more about that?
Well, it does change everything. It changes the air in the room. It changes, you're the same guy. Like, Joe Walsh said, everybody's so different, I haven't changed, right? And that's
Mhm.
true. Is when you start to win, when you start to be more successful, when you start to, hit that top of the podium, or when you start to skate at a level that draws more people to what you're doing, it creates more opportunity. It creates the next possibility. It creates all kinds of incredible, people look at you differently. People, they want to be a part of what you're doing. They really want to give you the next opportunity, and it just grows on itself. And out of the Olympics, I had this attitude that I wanted to be an appreciating asset. I didn't want to be a depreciating asset, meaning that I didn't want my Olympics to be the end all be all of how people looked at me and what they, whatever they thought of my skating. I wanted to take that and leverage it and be able to get to the next
Which is
level
harder to do
as
with a
best I
bronze
possibly.
medal, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can do a lot of things with a bronze medal. Look at Tyler Cranston; he skated for decades, and was loved and beloved by his native Canada and around the world. But you've got to, with the gold medal, it probably opens a few more doors, and
Yep.
and it's like NFL draft. If you're picked first, you're probably going to make a little bit more out of the gate than the guy who was picked third or fourth or fifth or whoever else was in the first round. That's a huge accomplishment
Yep.
to be picked in the first round, but to be the number one pick, that's a nod, and that's a credibility that you can really leverage into a greater career.
How do you juggle it all? You've got all these kids, you've got these foundations, you've got the Scott Hamilton Cares Foundation, which is an acronym for Cancer Alliance for Research, Education, and Survivorship. You've got written 3 books. How do you do it, Scott?
It sounds like a lot, and it is a lot. I've got skating academy. We teach kids their first steps on the ice, and we have the ability now with our coaching staff to take them all the way to the Olympics if they have the ability to do that. And that's fun. I do that as a volunteer for the Nashville Predators, and then the CARES Foundation I do as a volunteer because I lost my mother to cancer. I honor her, and I survived cancer, so I want to I want to be a part of the solution to cancer. How do we make the next journey better, easier than the last one? And we do that through funding the right research, which is, to immunotherapy to teach our own body's immune system how to fight the cancer and recognize it, destroy it, and in a way that's more natural and not so poisonous. As I'm here because of chemotherapy. I'm not a hypocrite, but I can't wait to get rid of it. All that's volunteer. And then, when I have to keep the lights on, I do a lot of speaking and I do some television for figure skating. And, I'm just sort of making it up as I go along. But, it's these experiences that I've been really blessed. Thank you, Lord. I've been blessed to experience are, and there's stuff there to mine. When I wrote Finish First, it was like, how does somebody like me win? And it's like, if I can do it, then just about anybody can. And it's all those 11 principles that I introduced throughout the book. This is the formula for winning. And when you win, it changes everything. It really does. It changes the next opportunity and what that looks like. And that opportunity changes the next one. Because if you build this sort of mentality for winning, whatever that experience or whatever that job or whatever that is, you can leverage that to never before anticipated. So, it's just that it's like winning changes everything. And if you can create a winning mindset, if you can create a winning image, you build a trust, right? And people get behind that, and they, in many respects, they just want to be a part of it. And And it's like that. How do you fix skating? Skating has been in kind of like a recession for the last, I guess, 15 years or so, 20 maybe. How do we rise above that? And it's win, baby, win. And that's what Nathan Chen's doing. And he's bringing a lot of attention to the sport. And when he goes to the Olympics next year, easily he'll be the favorite to win because he's dominated everyone. And people are going to be really excited, not only about watching him achieve that goal, but also about really being in the same room with him afterwards. So, again, you can leverage those moments and those hurdles accomplished, those medals won, those, and really turn them into the next opportunity.
You have another great quote in your book. You say that some of us are born with more resources than others, more access, more opportunities. Some may argue that a Michael Jordan or Wayne Gretzky, maybe they have more resources, maybe they didn't. But the real thing that kind of separates even those like a Michael Jordan or Wayne Gretzky, despite the opportunities, is one qualification that makes someone more likely to win. And you say that they choose to win.
Yeah.
Now, wow, that's a powerful statement. Can we amplify on that a little bit?
It's kind of like first brain tumor. Our mantra was, it is what it is, whatever it takes. And, when you can get into that whatever it takes kind of attitude, whatever it takes, right? So if you get into that whatever it takes, then you're participating more in what will be the outcome of whatever your pursuit is. And, you choose to win. You say, okay, I'm choosing to be better than I've ever been before. I'm choosing to be more committed than I've ever been before. I'm making the conscious choice of recognizing my abilities and my deficiencies and addressing them both in order to be as successful as I can be. And how far can I take this? And when I speak on Finish First, there's a great example of, I show a slide of a storage unit, one of those orange doored storage units, right?
Yep.
And Nashville, where I live, is the most competitive music market arguably in the world, right? If you want to make it in Nashville,
Sure.
you better bring it, right? So there's this guy who works a 9-to-5 job Monday through Friday, and every day after work, he'll grab a bite to eat, and then he'll bang on his drums in this storage area where he keeps his drums for 4 hours. And then on the weekends, he plays all day. And it's like, you want to pull him away on a weeknight to go to a movie or dinner, and he goes, no, I'm all in, I'm committed, I'm drumming that time. I've slotted those hours, and no one they're not going to interfere. That's being so myopic and being so committed that I have no doubt that guy is doing every single thing it takes in order to be competitive in the most competitive music market
No excuses,
in North America.
right?
No, you just show up. You just show up and you do the work, and you repeat those steps over and over and over to where they become second nature. When anybody starts skating at the skating academy and they're like, wobbling and they're doing all these things, and they have rental skates, which are the bane of my existence. They're on bad equipment. They've never skated before, and they go, I just don't think I can do this. And it's like, do you remember learning how to walk? And they go, no. I go, but do you think about it now? And they go, no. I go, that'll be your skating. You just got to show up.
Yeah,
Keep
just
doing
start.
it
Yeah.
over and
Great
over
lesson. Yeah.
and over. If you repeat something enough, it becomes second nature.
So, Scott, you're a role model literally to tens of millions of people who have challenges. You're a role model to me, watching you thrive despite your challenges. How have you been able to not only cope as a cancer and a brain tumor survivor, but to actually thrive and be happy despite it all, and be the eternal optimist you are known to be?
When I was writing Finish First, it just came down to, how many times do you think you've fallen? And I did the quick math, and I figured I'd fallen down probably about 41,600 times minimum.
Wow.
Well, I've gotten up 41,600 times.
Yeah.
The more you're able to get up, the more you're used to getting up. And that's why, when COVID shut everything down, it was like, we introduced Live Your Days. How can I encourage people? Well, I can remind them that our bodies are very fragile, also phenomenally resilient, but ultimately temporary. Today's one of your days. How are you going to live it? And it's a real call to action, because what we say throughout the Live Your Days platform is we don't get to choose how many days we live on this earth. We only get to choose how we live them. And so it's a real call to action. It's like standing up in the face of a pandemic and saying, no, I choose joy. I choose abundance. I choose it all. I just choose the good. And so, if people go on liveyourdays.com, they can find a 30-day challenge, which is really fun. And it's simple tasks that are meant to build those muscles of just gratitude and joy under any circumstance. And I think I was only able to do that because, when I had cancer, it was a real wake-up call because I lost my mother to cancer 20 years before. And then when I got through that, it was like, wow, that was really hard, but it was, here I am. And then brain tumor number 1, it is what it is, whatever it takes. Brain tumor number 2 was like getting kicked in the gut. I had surgery, brain surgery, 1 turned into 9. And then came back from that. And then when the next brain tumor was diagnosed, they're giving me the treatment options. And all I kept hearing in the back of my mind was get strong. And I didn't know what that meant, get strong. It's like they're telling me about surgery, they're telling me about medical options. And all I keep hearing is get strong. And I realized in that moment that it wasn't about getting strong physically or emotionally or intellectually or spiritually. It was all the above. In order for me to stand up in this moment, I had to be committed to be stronger than I've ever been in every capacity, in every aspect of my life. And it was the healthiest thing I've ever done. It was like, all right, yeah, I got a brain tumor. How do you want to treat it? I don't. I'm going to put my faith in the Lord. And I'm going to show up every day. I'm going to get stronger than I've ever been, and in every way I possibly can. And let's see where this thing goes. And so for the last 4 years, it grows, it shrinks, it shrinks, it grows, it shrinks, it grows. And so I haven't had to pull the trigger on any kind of treatment. There's no surgery, no chemo, no any of that. And when I do, I will. But for the time being, I'm just getting as strong as I possibly can.
So for Scott, for those people who are suffering and say, woe with me, would you say pull out your faith as the number one battle against
No, I'd
this
say,
challenge?
where are you weak right now? Get strong.
Hmm.
Are you weak emotionally? Get strong. Surround yourself with people that are going to lift you up. Are you weak because you don't understand your condition? Well, get smart. Do all the research you possibly can. Am I weak because of my condition? Well, physically, you can do things to, clean up your diet, do your research, take the right supplements, and build your body up. Move. Your body wants to move. Let it move. And ultimately, though, knowing that our physical being is temporary, but what's the driving force of all of it? That was our eternal soul. What are we doing to shore that up? And I don't want to give a sermon right now, but I will, because that's what we're called to do. And that is, get right with the Lord and just learn who he is, what he's about, and what he expects from us. There's a lot of really great preaching out there, and there's some really bad ones as well.
Hmm.
There's a lot of really amazing, strong, generous Christians that can really help you along your path and allowing you to understand who Jesus is and what he's about. And there's a lot of really bad ones too. So, you just got to invest. You got to invest the time it takes to shore yourself up in every capacity. And then once you do that, life takes on a different identity, and challenge takes on a different identity. And we respect our days better than, and more than we ever have. And that's it. How are we going to make today great?
What a
What are
great
we going to
lesson.
do
Yeah.
to make today really worth living? And I know I met so many people that just can't help but suck lemons, like that all the time. Like,
Yeah. And I'm
no,
trying to,
no,
I'm trying
no,
to get them
Jim.
to change on my show.
Well, no, I mean, you're doing a great service by introducing them to concepts and thoughts and mindsets, and it's healthy. This is healthy stuff. And but it all starts with a choice that you want to live better than you lived before. You want to be happier than you've been before. You want to be more alive than you've ever been. It starts with that choice,
Choice. I
that to
love that.
move forward.
Love it.
And it is a choice. I've seen too many people like Kyle Maynard. Have you ever interviewed Kyle Maynard?
Not
You
yet.
should.
I will.
Kyle Maynard climbed Mount Kilimanjaro.
Wow.
A lot of people have, a lot of people have done that. How many people have done it without arms or legs?
Mm, not many.
He got to the top with a soldier's ashes and
Remarkable.
poured them out. It's like, how many people do you know have been burned over 85% of their body and were, as a baby, 27 surgeries or more, just skin grafts and everything else, don't have ears, don't have fingers, learned how to hammer nails at a mission trip and became junior class president because they were easily the most popular kid in their grade. How do you rise above that to be that? And it all starts with a decision to not allow your circumstances to control your quality of life
I love
and
that.
how you want to live. And so I've been inspired by so many people that are just remarkable in a way that it's like, well, if they can do that, like, so can I. So can I. I'm going to tell you a quick story. I was on a shuttle bus at Los Angeles airport one time. And as a kid growing up, like Art Linkletter was all that. Like
Mhm.
he had, kids say the darndest things, and he was really popular at his own talk show. And I'd watch it all the time. I just thought he was the coolest thing ever. And he was on this shuttle bus with me. And I'm a professional skater and I'm doing all these things. And so I summoned up the courage to meet him. And I went up and I said, Mr. Linkletter, I'm a big fan of yours. I just wanted to say hello. And he goes, Scott? I was just like, my knees went like that. And I go, yes, sir. He goes, I know who you are. I must have gone just flush red. And I was like, well, I didn't know what to say. And he goes, oh, you've endured so much, you childhood illness. Am I right? And I go, yes, sir. And he goes, and you survived cancer. And I go, yes, sir. And he said, and you grew bald publicly. And I went, I didn't know that was, a disability, but I go, yes, sir. And I look at this perfect head of hair, and I'm like, okay. So it's perspective, right?
Yeah.
It's like that would be for him. It would be like, oh, that I couldn't live with that, and it's like, really, because I'm really grateful that I can get out of the shower and I can do this, and I'm done. I'm ready to go. And I don't have to worry about product or hair drying or anything else or styling. My haircut takes less than 5 minutes, and so it's like there's so many great things about growing bald publicly, and
Yep.
that's okay. So I think a lot of our condition can be thrust upon us, or it can be just sort of something a lie we believe. But knowing that we have a living, loving God that just loves us and adores us more than anything else, it's a pretty strong starting place.
That's a good thing to rely on right there. Absolutely. So, Scott, tell me about Fritzy Finds a Hat, your book. Tell us about that.
So it started with my mom, the way she told us that she had cancer. She came home from a doctor's visit, and she goes, "Hey, everybody, family meeting." And I was like, "What's a family meeting?" And so we sat down around the table, and she goes, "Okay, everybody, I just came from the doctor, and I have a disease called cancer. And it's just I'm gonna be taking some medicine. I mean, I feel good, and I might have surgery or whatever. But anyway, I'm gonna need some help around the house." And I thought cancer was a really bad thing. And I watched her go through it, and she was remarkable. She would say things like, "Oh, this chemotherapy, I finally found a way to lose all this weight." And this chemo is awesome. My hair has always been such a problem. These wigs are so beautiful and so much easier. And she goes, "Oh, this chemo is phenomenal. I've wanted to quit smoking all these years. Now I have no desire." It's like she flipped the script, and it was like, yeah. So basically, the idea of Fritzy Finds a Hat is that Fritzy's mom comes home with the news that she has cancer, and every Tuesday she goes in for a treatment. And Fritzy takes it on himself to say, "I'm going to find her the perfect hat for her treatment days." Something that. And so we pulled everybody together. It was Brad Paisley did a lot of the illustrations, and Mary Coffeen. I mean, it was a really great group effort to pull Fritzy together, but it was all based on the courage and the attitude of my mom, and how children can really participate in their parents' challenges and be problem solving.
Wow, love it. Scott, thank you so much for sharing all these great motivations, inspirations, helping to uplift people. How would you like to leave our audience today? Any other further thoughts?
Oh man, we've just got through or getting through or are still going through one of the most difficult things we've ever experienced, just the loss of life, people getting sick, just all the decisions that come with vaccines and all these other loss of work and it's been a devastating time in our history. And I just really want to encourage people just to know that this too shall pass, to hang in there in every way you possibly can, and to just try to inject a mountain of joy into your lives. My wife said it best in an interview, because no matter when I have a scan, I say no matter whatever the result is, I'm going to face it joyfully. And they're like, really? And she said, joy isn't the lack of fear and suffering, it's how you go through it. And I really want people to understand that no matter what's going on in our world, in our life, and everything else, we still can choose to enjoy this moment, this day, and just fight for that, and really, choose to be stronger than you've ever been, and to be more aware that it all starts with the fact that you're loved unconditionally and forever. That's what somebody told me the definition of the gospel was. They said, you are loved, deal with it. So it's about choosing today to make your day or somebody else's better. And that's kind of the secret sauce is just, it starts with a choice.
So beautifully said.
And everything comes from that choice.
So tell us again how people can stay in touch with Scott Hamilton and your foundation and all your work.
Well, everything, you can go through scotthamilton.com, scottcares.org, liveyourdays.com. I think you can navigate to everything from the scotthamilton.com webpage, but we're doing a lot of fun things, and we're serving the community in fun ways, and everyone's invited to the party. So come join us, and let's, on the cancer side, let's change the world for the better. And if you want to learn how to skate, we know how to do that. And I'm here to serve, and I'm here to do whatever I can to take the gifts I've been given and share them in the best ways possible.
And I'd like to encourage my audience to go out and get yourself a few dozen copies of Finish First, which I can't put down. Great lessons of life on how winning changes everything, and it really does. And go out and get Fritzy Finds a Hat, because these things support Scott's foundations, and they're good things. Thank you so much for being part of our show today, Scott.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in. We love our listeners, and we believe you have greatness within you. If you like The Motivation Show, we appreciate you subscribing, rating, and reviewing us. Check out 𝐒𝐜𝐴marcussuccess.com to hear more inspiring shows and to read our motivational blog. That's 𝐒𝐜𝐴marcussuccess.com.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.